Dear listener, the following story is a fictional narrative. However, it contains mention of suicide, self-harm, and abuse. Listener discretion is advised. Again, this narrative contains mention of self-harm, suicide, and abuse, and may not be suitable for all audiences. With that done, let's get to the story. The story we'll be reading today is The House I Squatted In Never Existed, Part 1, the first part of a 4-part story by SXE_Savior on Reddit. My father committed suicide when I was 6 years old. When you're that young, you don't really understand much beyond the fact that daddy's never coming back home, and that mommy will never be the same again. She was always a drinker, but when dad died, it increased tenfold. She hit me for the first time when I was 8. I don't remember what I said at all, but I remember my cheek stinging afterwards. The look on her face could be best described as indifferent. She didn't look like she hated me, but she didn't look like she loved me either. Her eyes told me, "You're my son, and I have to love you." I'll never forget that look. It was a look that told me all I needed to know. I didn't belong there. I ran away for the first time when I was 13. It was only for a couple of days. Police responded pretty fast on a report of a homeless 13-year-old, and I was back in my mother's chokehold. I remember the taste of blood more than anything that day. When I was 15, Mom got a boyfriend, Darren. My year with Darren was hell. Shouting matches, fist fights, nights slept at the bus stop, all while my mother witnessed it with a bottle in her hand. As the year went on, it got harder and harder to convince teachers that I was just a really clumsy boy. My 16th birthday was the final straw. I came home to my mother passed out on the couch while Darren tried to rip off her clothes. I led with my fist first. They connected with the back of his head, and he fell to the ground hard. When he got up, I immediately regretted it. I was thrown against the wall and beaten till I couldn't stand. My blurry vision watched as blood dripped onto the floor below me, and Darren's voice drifted in and out. But I did hear one thing clearly. "Get the fuck out of my house." Didn't take much convincing after that. With nothing but my father's heavy leather jacket and a backpack, I walked to the bus stop and cried myself to sleep on a cold bench. It seemed my absence from school went mostly unnoticed, until Maddie called. Maddie was a fiery little redhead who had some strange fascination with me since middle school. I never understood it until I met her father, the richest man in the city, with property on every square inch. The fact that I breathed the same air as his perfect daughter pissed him off, and she loved pushing his buttons, so of course we started dating. I never told her about what happened at home, but I didn't need to. She saw every scar, every bruise, every black eye. She never asked. She would just kiss me and remind me she was there. Whether she actually cared about me or not, I didn't care. It was just nice to have someone like her in my life. She called me after a few absences. She sounded worried, but I didn't feel right asking her for a place to stay. Winter was coming, though, and I was pretty sure I was developing hypothermia. I needed a warm bed, and she was the only one I trusted to give me one. There was a tree at the side of her house, big, tall, and directly next to her bedroom window. I'd used that tree hundreds of times to sneak into her room, fool around, and get chased out by her dad. It was always fun. I climbed up that tree again when the cold had become too much to bear. She met me at the window with a smile, as warm and bright as I remembered, and slid the window open. "Hey, loser," she said sweetly, but her smile faded slightly when the soft pink lights of her room lit up my face. "You okay?" As okay as usual. I put my hands on the thick branch above my head and leaned forward. Got kicked out again. She ignored my words and put a gentle hand to my cheek. I winced a little at her touch. It didn't hurt, but gentleness like hers still shocked me. "What'd he do this time?" she asked in a whisper. I shrugged and let my gaze drift away from her. My silence only seemed to grow her curiosity. "Chris, talk to me." "I'm fine," I said a little too quickly, as my eyes returned to hers. "I need a place to stay for a few days." She gave a sad sigh before she responded. You know you can't stay here. As much as I want you to, Dad will kill us both." I rolled my eyes at the mention of her father. I'm not sure any father would just accept some homeless kid into their house. But if that homeless kid were dating their daughter, they'd at least think about it. Mr. Morgan would strangle me with his bare hands before I even got to ask. "Just tonight, Mads," I pleaded quietly. "I'm cold." Maddie gave me a small smile and grabbed the studded lapel of my jacket. "Get in here, idiot." She giggled and pulled me through the window. I stepped in quietly, something I've gotten quite good at over the years. "You wear this jacket so damn much, you'd think you'd never get cold." Her hands, warm and soft, slipped under my jacket and shrugged it off my shoulders. It hit the floor with a thud, and I felt her hands trace down my chest and to my arms. I pulled away instinctively, but she gripped my wrist and pulled it back towards her. "You've been doing it again." Her fingers gently traced the raised skin slashed across my wrist. I let her fingers wander my ledger of failures and thought of any excuse I could. None came to mind. "It's been rough, Mads," I whispered. She looked up at me and stepped closer. Her hand squeezed my wrist as she placed a kiss on my cheek. "Get in bed. You're safe here for tonight." I slept like a baby that night, with her arm squeezing me like a teddy bear, like she was scared I'd disappear in the middle of the night. I was scared of that myself. When the morning sunlight hit my face, she was still clinging to my side. I opened my eyes to find she had been awake and just staring at me. "What?" I groggily asked. "You look so peaceful when you sleep." Her mouth curved into a small smile, and she shifted to rest her head on my shoulder. "We have an hour before Dad comes up to check on me." "I can think of a few." "Shut up!" She interrupted me with a smack to my chest. "We need to talk about where you're going to stay." I squeezed her slightly. "I can get used to living here." She giggled and shook her head. "If you only plan on living for another 45 minutes, sure." Her face dropped a little, and I felt her heart skip a beat. Her hand traveled down my arm, but stopped before she got to my wrists. "I wish you could, I really do, but I'm serious, Chris. You need somewhere permanent." I sighed and sat up, my head resting against the wall behind us. "I'm not going to a shelter," I admitted quietly. "They freak me out." "What about an orphanage?" Not many jumping at the chance to scoop up someone like me. She frowned and looked up at me. Our eyes met, and I saw nothing but concern fill her sparkly green eyes. It made me smile, and without a second thought I kissed her. She seemed surprised, but smiled again and kissed me. The outside world melted while our lips connected. It felt as though this was what life was supposed to feel like. When she pulled away, I felt the world come back into focus. It was disappointing. "I have an idea." She whispered against my lips. It's stupid. That's your specialty. I gave a small chuckle as she propped herself up on her elbows. My dad has a bunch of properties he's abandoned. They get plumbing, power, everything, and he barely remembers he's paying for them. Why don't we try one of them? I laughed a little. A place to live? And I get to fuck with your dad? No need to sell me, princess. She smiled wide. That was her favorite nickname. And she kissed me again. We have 30 minutes, loser. She whispered against my lips as her hands roamed my chest and she straddled my waist. We met again later that night at the closest gas station to her house. I sat on the curb, my jacket wrapped tight around me, the glow of the Circle K sign bathing me in a red hue. I shivered, sighed, and watched my breath fog in front of me as the clicking of heels made themselves apparent. You don't have to dress up for me, I said with a small chuckle. I went to dinner and came straight here, she said with a tinge of annoyance I'd grown to love. Mom and Dad think I'm with Liv, so we better hurry. I stood and gave her a once-over. Long coat that was worth more than my entire life, a long multicolored scarf, a thick woven sweater. I couldn't help but wonder if she understood we were planning on breaking into a house tonight. How far is it? Not far. We walked for maybe 10 minutes before coming upon a barely lit neighborhood. One street lamp lit up the corner, but the houses were shrouded in darkness. It was an eerie thing, seeing such a suburban dream trapped in limbo. She grabbed my hand and walked me down the street. We passed empty house after empty house, and I wondered how the hell we had a homeless crisis. I got a peek at Dad's listings and found one he's paid the least amount of attention to, Maddie explained as she pulled me further into the darkness. Has heat, plumbing, electricity, everything. You sure he won't notice? I asked skeptically. No one lives here. He never comes down here. You'll be fine, promise. She flashed me a sweet smile, and I felt my nerves calm slightly. We stopped at our destination, and my eyes followed the structure in front of us. It was one story, obviously outdated, but it had a certain charm to it. It was built sturdy, stone walls, a shingled roof, and a few too many windows for my liking. The door seemed to be the oldest element, its blue paint chipped and falling onto the porch. Maddie turned around to me and smiled. What do you think? It's bigger than I'm used to, I admitted quietly and absent-mindedly. She gave a small giggle, kissed my cheek, and pulled my arm again to drag me to the door. It opened with ease when she turned the knob. We were greeted with a dark, empty house, unfurnished and eerily quiet. Something in my chest tightened when I crossed the threshold between sleeping on the streets and sleeping in a house. This felt wrong. Maddie flicked a switch. I swore it echoed. And the lights took a few seconds to fill the room. The floors were tile, a creamy white color that had too much reflection, and the kitchen, which was just visible from where I stood, looked strangely rustic when compared to the rest of the house. I kept my mouth shut, but my stomach turned. Weird, Maddie whispered before she turned to me. Empty houses freak me out, like... She trailed off and cleared her throat. Thankfully, there should be a bed in here. We took a left down a small hallway and walked through the only door into the bedroom. Empty, except for a basic wooden frame with a mattress sat in it. Covers were pulled tight against it. White sheets were bright, and the pillows looked fluffed. You're sure no one lives here?
Nope, Maddie smiled. Dad just loved to make sure he had a place to sleep in case he was stuck in one of these houses.
My eyes were stuck to the bed, perfectly made in the center of this empty, forgotten room. I pushed the anxieties out of my mind and let out a breath. It's better than the bus station, I said with a laugh. Maddie smacked my arm.
You can say thank you, idiot.
We both laughed, and I pecked her lips. Thank you, Mads, really. I smiled, turned back to the bed, and felt a feeling I hadn't felt in years. I didn't want to sleep alone tonight. Are you staying with me? I asked as I turned back to face her. My voice gave away more fear than I had meant it to.
I can't,
Maddie replied solemnly.
They're expecting me back home soon, but I'll come by tomorrow with some groceries, okay?
I kept the disappointment off my face and simply nodded. Okay. I leaned in and kissed her again, letting my lips linger a few seconds longer on hers. I'll see you tomorrow. She grabbed my hand, squeezed it, and gave me another small kiss.
See you tomorrow, loser.
I watched her leave, and when the door shut, unease washed over my body. I needed to know this house, every corner, or else I wasn't going to be able to sleep. I walked back out to the hall and froze in the doorway. There was another door. That was impossible. We walked down the hall. There was one door. One. But I stood there and stared at the one in front of me. I felt my heart quicken. My hand moved before I could think, and I grabbed the knob. I reeled back immediately. It was freezing. It was so cold it hurt to touch. I gripped my right hand in my left and jumped when I heard something behind the door. Laughter. A child's laughter. That wasn't real, I thought to myself. It was just my imagination. Hallucinations brought on by sleeping for a total of 8 hours over the past 3 days. The door laughed again. I turned and walked down the hallway, into the unfurnished living room. The lights were still on. Something about that made me feel safe. I took a few minutes to wander the house. It felt bigger than it looked, and made sure every window was shut and locked. My nerves calmed slightly after this procedure was done, but I kept the lights on. If no one came down here anyway, no one would call the cops. And I didn't want to sleep in the dark. I felt like a child thinking that way. But something about that damn door made me feel like that. The way it laughed when I passed it again to get to the bedroom. I hated it. But it was all a dream. I just needed to catch up on sleep, and things would feel more rational. I had a funny way of being wrong back then, because when I woke up the next morning, the door was still there, and the laughing only grew louder. End of story. Once again, just a big thank you to the author that let me read this story. If it wasn't for authors like SXE Savior, I wouldn't have anything to read. So a huge thanks to them. I hope you guys all enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.